On Jazz for the 11th of October. Preseason game number 3. Sure sounds like the Jazz are revving it up. The national pundits are consistent and clear what they think of the Utah Jazz. Can we really blame them? And the NBA GM survey's out. We'll break down what they had to say about the club. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz. Today's going to be an interesting show because right before we started, I dumped an entire glass of emergency all over my desk and all over my notes. So my beautiful notes are now waterlogged and all over the place. So who knows whether I'm able to put this. Well, there'll be a bunch of pausing saying, what does that look like? We'll figure it out. Jazz and the Pelicans tonight, from all sounds of everything coming out of camp the last few days, is exactly kind of how we anticipated the three stages of training camp are taking place. So when the Jazz opened camp, they had a lot of time before they were going to play their first regular season game. They went to Vegas. They even got a day off in Vegas. And what they really, I think that was, we'll call that stage one, was camaraderie building. They brought the team together. They discussed the loss against the Clippers. Andy Larson's been kind of working on an interesting piece you'll probably see at some point if he hasn't already written it and I missed it, but I do subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune, so I don't think I've missed it. About, hey, they sat down and they addressed everyone's viewpoint of what went wrong in the Clippers series and tried to deal with that ghost and not have it linger in the room for the rest of the year. And had all the guys talk about the different things they think might have caused them to lose that. And then, interestingly enough, to have Rudy Gay and Eric Pascal talk about, from an outside perspective, how they guard the Jazz and what they do so that the Jazz, kind of could clear themselves of that, and then tried to recreate a little bit of the bubble where this team got its camaraderie back together in Orlando and have that experience. And I was wildly impressed as that started, where the Jazz mindset was coming out of Content and Media Day, and how, how they felt about themselves. It didn't actually seem as though they, it's super smart, I think, from the coaching staff standpoint to try to address this, make sure that they understand where they are, move forward into what, I thought Mike Conley very asserted, we have to find out what team we're going to be this season. What a team is one season doesn't lead into the next. Guys have changed. People are different. You've heard me talk about this a lot. This has a bunch of different little pieces to it with the primary 7 guys the same. It'll still have a little bit of a different feel to it. And so, I think the mindset I saw from the Jazz was fabulous, was really impressive. And so that was Vegas. They came out of Vegas. They played 2 preseason games. A lot of guys didn't play. Joe and Rudy didn't play at all, continuing to keep them fresh. They played an extra 14 games in the Olympics. They'd never gotten a break so they gave them a little bit extended break. And then it sounds like, from what everyone had to say about practice the last few days, they really got after it. That now it started. And that makes sense. They came out of the day off, and I think if I have my numbers right, they were about 13 days, maybe even 10 days away from the opener. The opener a week from Wednesday, so it's 9 days as of today. So if you go back to where it sounds like they started really practicing Saturday, we came back Wednesday, Thursday was off, and they got after it Friday. They were about 12 days away from the regular season. This team doesn't need more than 12 days. And so this is kind of exactly what I think you'd expect. And we'll see, I would suspect we'll see close to a full rotation night. If Bojan's really going to play, then other than Rudy Gay, who's not going to be available for a while, I think we see the signs of a regular rotation. I think we'll see their regular, maybe even the first half of basketball. We'll see an entire regular stint. And then depending on where Quinn thinks they are, they may get the first stint of the third quarter. So when I say stint, Donovan opens the game usually by playing the first X amount of minutes, and Joe comes in and plays 12 straight. I would suspect Joe comes and plays close to 12 straight today. Get his body used to playing again at the same way he's going to in the regular season. You don't need to do both 12s, but if you can just do one, and maybe they'll do it a little differently. They had Jordan Clarkson play 16 minutes the other night. That seems Royce played, I think, 16 minutes the other night. But I would suspect that. Now, the Pelicans don't have Zion Williamson, and they don't have Brandon Ingram, so they're not going to be quite the same team. They do have a bunch of energetic guards. They'll probably have Valanciunas. So when Valanciunas is on the floor, the Jazz will get to work against, probably drop big in that style of play. We'll see what Willie Green does with his team, first-year head coach. And then the other aspect is the Jazz, when they go small, we'll see a lot of dribble penetration the Jazz can work on those things. From the players that I think we're most interested in seeing, it will be curious to me how they work in Jared Butler, how they work in Eric Pascal, how they work in Elijah Hughes into the rotation tonight, and whether or not they go to the full 9-man rotation, which is really how the Jazz churn it out during the regular season for the first half, or whether they kind of expand it out, accordion it out to try to include some extra minutes and keep those minutes down on guys. Because it is important or evaluation standpoint to see Pascal, Hughes, and Butler against NBA players. Now, the beauty of what the Jazz have that a lot of teams don't have is that those guys are going to compete against NBA players in practice. And if they really let it rip on Saturday and Sunday, the way it sounds like they did, then you end up with getting that opportunity against those guys in that practice, and you learn an awful lot from that. But there are certain guys that are lights on players who play better in that circumstance. So I think watch the rotations tonight, watch kind of the time in which guys check out, and see whether or not that matches their regular rotation, because I think that is the sign for tonight. In regards to the personnel of the Pelicans, you're not going to do a huge amount of prep. You'll go through shoot around today. And what they usually will do in shoot around is use the example of a player on the other team to be able to go through a principle of what they do defensively. So, for example, I'm trying to think of something, but when you're playing, let's say they would use Zion tonight, and he's not playing, but you still might as shoot around go through, hey, we know Zion's not playing, but if we were playing Zion, this is a way we guard the post. And this is how we're going to double up the post, and use that as a way to practice that concept more than preparing for the night. Or Brandon Ingram, isolation wing player, like how are we going to shade? How are we going to move over? That's what you would work. Ingram, again, not playing tonight. So, or you're going to talk about a big rolling big tonight in Jonas Valanciunas and walk through for shoot around the different ways you'll deal with a rolling big defensively more than planning for Valanciunas. So that's the game plan tonight. The NBA, Zach Lowe released his tiers. The NBA GMs gave out their survey. It's the Vegas odds are out. It's certainly clear what everyone thinks of the Utah Jazz. Should we be upset? Should we feel slighted? Should we just tip our hat and say, yeah, we get that? We'll talk about all those things as we continue. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. And we are here for you each and every day, available free and on all platforms. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Murdoch family in Utah for over 80 years, and the ultimate testament to how much they care about Utah and the people is what they're doing right now. With all the car shortage, many dealerships are increasing your MSRP. If you want a car, you're paying an extra $10,000, $15,000 for it. And the Murdochs have said, nope, we're not going to do that. We do not want to be going to the grocery store. We do not want to be going to church around our people, feeling as though we've gouged them for prices just because we could. I was talking to Blake about this the other day. Blake's like, I'll tell you what, people in my industry think I'm crazy, but he's like, I trust that people are going to hear this messaging and know we're a part of the community. It's going to be worthwhile in the long run from a business standpoint. And he knows morally that it's absolutely what he wants to be doing. So that's what the Murdochs are doing right now. They're doing both at Murdoch Chevy and at Murdoch Hyundai. Murdoch Chevy's got the great truck lineup, the Silverado and the Colorado, the two trucks. The SUV lineup is Signature, Suburban, and Tahoe. But don't forget the Equinox, the Blazer, or the Trax, or even the three-seater Traverse, all there. And the great Corvette, if you want something special. It's getting to be wintertime, so maybe Colorado, Silverado. We saw that over the weekend. Check it all out at Murdoch Chevy in Woods Cross and in Logan. If you want to stop by, feel free to give me a buzz and email me, and I'll set you up with a meeting before you head over there. DLock09. You've got one device that lets you catch the games live, another that you stream through your favorite shows and you watch sports highlights on your phone. And you got your neighbor's best friend's cousin's second cousin log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the stuff you need at once. It's DirecTV Stream, and it has Jazz games. It brings you live TV, on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. And that means no more juggling remotes, no more need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. Learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package, and Jazz games are available on DirecTV Stream. So what does everybody think about the Utah Jazz? And should we be bitter about it? I think it might be fair. I kind of get it. And the bottom line is everyone's impressed and everyone's waiting to see. They all were really where the Milwaukee Bucks were a year ago. Yeah, they're good, but I've seen those last two playoffs. In our case, probably 4 playoffs. And so what you're seeing here is, Zach Lowe does his tiers. He's a little bit more favorable than everyone else. He had Brooklyn, and then he had Milwaukee as kind of their own tiers, and then he had the Jazz, Suns, and Lakers. So he put the Jazz in with the Suns and the Lakers. Lakers are 0 for the preseason. I was thinking about opening the show with like this incredible, see, I told you the Lakers were going to suck. Like Westbrook's terrible. I was going to do this whole big rant and then go, just kidding. It's preseason. Nobody cares. But I was too scared that somebody would stop listening like 4 minutes in, call their friends, tell them it was real, go on Twitter, start tweeting about it, and never get to the point where I said, I'm kidding. So I'm not doing it. But they have been terrible, and Westbrook's got more turnovers than points, I think, in 1 or 2 of the last games. And they're fine. Like, they're LeBron and Anthony Davis, and they'll be fine. And I get it. When you go to betonline.ag and look at the lines for the NBA futures, I have to admit the Warriors line to me is far more surprising to me than anything about the Lakers. The line, Lakers are plus 190 to win the West. The Warriors are plus 550, and then the Jazz and the Suns. Jazz are plus 600, and the Suns are plus 650. That's really, if I was the Suns, I think I'm the one who has the right to be a little upset that they made the NBA Finals last year. They had an incredible year, and they're being dissed a little bit. Like, people are basically saying, yeah, we don't really buy that that's going to happen again. And they've got 3 players in Ayton, Bridges, and Booker, who all should be better this year than they were a year ago. So I actually find it a little hard to believe that they're not. If I'm picking, I'm taking Phoenix to win the West. Like, that's if Chris Paul gets hurt, but if Mike Conley gets hurt, if Donovan, so without injuries, I think Phoenix has got the best offense in the West. I think they'll have a good defense again. I think their defense might be better. They will miss Dario Saric, but if I have to make a pick to win the West, it's Phoenix. So in some of these conversations, I actually think if we're going to be kind of feeling as though we were slighted, and I don't know that we've been slighted, I would say that I'd be more slighted if I was the Phoenix Suns. But so Zach Lowe had it, I think, an interesting, what he had is that the Jazz are on the same tier as the Lakers and the Suns. And that seems, I think fairly fair. And he basically says on continuity, they should maybe repeat as the number 1 seed. And then he talks about that, they've got to improve their perimeter defense. And Rudy has to do more on offense to punish the teams when they're switching. I think we would all agree with that. And so I think that's the first part of it. The NBA survey was really interesting because I thought the NBA GM survey really revealed what everyone thinks of the Jazz and what's taking place right now. So first off is who will win the 2020 NBA Finals? And the Jazz don't get a vote, nor do the Suns. So the only teams that seem to get votes were the Brooklyn Nets, who got 72% of the votes, the Los Angeles Lakers, or the Milwaukee Bucks. What's interesting to me about that is my feeling about the league right now is it's really wide open. Kyrie's going to get his shot. He's going to get vaccinated. That's going to all go by the wayside. And the Brooklyn does have the team that, if all clicks, is the most talented and probably unstoppable. Though James Harden does look like he might have entered the hot dog eating contest in the offseason. He usually figures it out though. So that's the, I get it. But otherwise, to me, when I look at this, I feel as though the Suns have about a 15% chance. The Jazz have about a 15% chance. The Lakers have a 15% chance. The Bucks have about a 15 to 20% chance to win it. The Nets probably have a 20% chance. Dallas, Denver, all those other teams, I think Kawhi comes back. Clippers have a chance. You look at the West, it came out as 80% of the GMs took the Lakers to win the West. Last year, 86% of the GMs took the Lakers to pick the West over what was then the Clippers, Denver, and Dallas as the next team, then Portland, Utah, Golden State, and Phoenix. So last year was Lakers, Clippers, Denver, Dallas, Portland, Utah, Golden State, and Phoenix. This year, 80% Lakers, 13% Utah, and 7% Phoenix picked to win the West. So not a Denver, not one person taking Denver with Jamal Murray coming back, not one person buying into Klay Thompson, Golden State coming back, not one person buying into the Clippers, not one person buying into Jason Kidd in Dallas. Then they did them by points, and it came out the similar: Lakers, Utah, Phoenix, Denver, Golden State, Clippers, Dallas, Portland. Pretty good 8. Be interesting to see if Golden State falls out. That's the one team. John Hollinger's predictions on The Athletic were there. That I was reading The Athletic John Hollinger article. Is pretty interesting how much tax burden there is on both the Clippers and the Warriors. And while they both have endless funds, if either of those teams start slowly, I cannot imagine those owners just be willy-nilly pay, $100 million, $50 million in tax in a one-time check for a team that they know is not going to win it. I could see both those teams unloading at some point in time and really changing the landscape of this race. The Clippers unloading with the thought of revamping for next year, and the Warriors, I don't know, maybe waiting a year for Wiseman and Kuminga and Moody to all get going. But I'll be surprised if those teams are just willy-nilly going to write this massive, massive checks if they're not high level with a chance to win it. And so I think the Lakers and the Clippers and Warriors starts this year are particularly important. The Jazz get great respect here on this GM rankings in this sense. 13% of them take him as the number 1 seed. 53 take him as the number 2 seed. So 66% of the GM survey has the Jazz as the 1 or 2 seed in the West, while only 30% has Phoenix as the 1 or 2 seed. 87% has the Lakers as the 1 or 2 seed. And then if you include the 3 seed, there's 20%. So suddenly you have 86% of the GMs have the Jazz as the 1, 2, or 3 of it, but very few no one willing to pick them to win the title, and very few willing to pick them to win the West. And I have to say, that's clearly where everybody has us. And what's going to be, I think, interesting for us this year is that's going to be the storyline all season long when people talk about this team. And we're going to have to get used to it, because no matter how we start the year, the national stories about the Utah Jazz are going to be, they look good again in the regular season. Will it translate? Is something different? Do they have something different than they've had before? What are the signs that it's real? Those are going to be the storylines. And frankly, those are going to be our storylines too, because I think that's pretty fair and pretty accurate. And it's really clear where everyone sits on that right now. Let's run through some other interesting little things on the GM survey and see where you were thought of so very highly. MVP, no mention of any Jazz players, nor probably should there. And if we kind of look at the betonline.ag odds, those aren't there. It's a Durant, Doncic, Antetokounmpo run. If you're starting a franchise today, it's a Doncic, Antetokounmpo conversation. I was surprised that very few votes for Zion. I do wonder if people are really concerned about the injury there, because frankly, Zion might be on one level the most untalked about player. If you want disrespect, we're going to play the disrespect card there. And I don't think we are. I think Phoenix has a right to it. I think Jokic has a tremendous, not one person voted Jokic for the 21-22 MVP. It wasn't close last year. He was the best player in the league by a large margin. There was only one vote for him on player you'd want to start a franchise with. The playoff ouster for Denver, I guess, has soured people a little bit, which I don't think is fair. player that makes coaches make the most adjustments. I thought this was super interesting because they all voted offense. Not one player voted defense. Last year was James Harden. This year it's Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, James Harden, and then Jokic does finally get some votes in there. And I thought that was an interesting testament to how all the GMs look at the game and evaluate the game, is that they look at it all from the offensive game. One person in particular in the Jazz organization got a lot of love, and one group of people, you, got a lot of love as well. We'll touch on that. We continue. Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen every day. Locked On Fantasy Basketball is revving you up for the fantasy season and getting you going, so make sure you listen to Josh Lloyd today as your second listen. Today's show brought to you by Built Bar. What do they got going on today? What a crazy week last week. They had new flavors every day, and they've done it again. An Apple Almond Crisp sale. That's right. Apple Almond Crisp flash sale going on right now. I thought last week was good enough with the strawberry puffs and the churro puffs, but now they've dropped Apple Almond Crisp, limited time, limited supplies, available, 100% real chocolate, 100% really delicious. And they still have the cherry lime available for you. The mint marshmallow is gone, but the strawberry and the churro puffs are available, plus the regular great flavors all there as well. You can get a mixed box for 18 bars or build your own box. And every bar still has the amazing macros of 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 4 sugars, 5 grams of fiber, and 17 grams of protein. It's all at built.com. And if you use the promo code LOCKED15, that's LOCKED15, you end up with a 15% discount, all at Locked 15. Speaking of Josh Lloyd and fantasy, is it time to do it on Game Pick on the Sleeper app? In 2018, the fantasy experts at Sleeper realized that fantasy basketball was broken. Games were being won and lost based on whose players had more scheduled games that week. It made no sense, required very little strategy. So in 2020, Sleeper released a brand new way of playing fantasy basketball called Game Pick, and it's only available on Sleeper. In Game Pick, owners pick a single game per week for each starter to count toward their total score. So you're not losing and doing all the busy work of who plays games. Instead, you're picking player matchups, you're picking home and away, you're picking opponent defensive rating, you're picking whoever's not playing Rudy Gobert, you're picking pace of play, all the things smart people do. It's at Game Picks. You can do redraft, keeper, or dynasty. It's available playing on the Sleeper app. So right now, download the Sleeper app, start your league with your friends today. You will not be disappointed. All right. Congratulations, Jazz fans. You were named the #1 home court advantage in the NBA. You either deserve this because of the fact that you live at altitude, or because you're raucously loud, and because the fan base is awesome. But the #1 home court advantage in the NBA went to the Utah Jazz and their fans. So congratulations. Denver was 2, Knicks were 3, and the Blazers were 4. Warriors used to be on the top of that list till they built their Taj Mahal. So congratulations, Jazz fan. The Jazz have the #1 home court advantage. It's also why I think we end up being seeded so highly this year. Quinn Snyder got a lot of love as well on the coaching front. Best head coach in the NBA, Eric Spoelstra, followed by Monty Williams, then Quinn, then Pop, and Mike Budenholzer. A little disrespect for Bud. He just won it. Spoelstra gets it for the second straight year from the GMs. What head coach is the best manager and motivator of talent? Monty Williams. Which head coach makes the best in-game adjustments? Quinn was 4th behind Tyronn Lue, Rick Carlisle, Eric Spoelstra, tied with Nick Nurse. But what head coach runs the best offense? Quinn Snyder runs the best offense. Steve Kerr, Mike Budenholzer, Steve Nash after that. What coach has the best defense? Tom Thibodeau, Mike Budenholzer, and then Quinn Snyder. So Quinn, #1 offensive coach, #3 defensive coach in the GM polls across the league right now. Alex Jensen got a vote for best assistant, though they misspelled his name. So that's not great. Active player who will most likely be a head coach someday, Mike Conley. Was voted after Chris Paul, Rajon Rondo, and TJ McConnell all voted in there. Jazz got voted one of the best defensive players. Rudy, best interior defensive player. #2 defensive player behind Giannis. Best perimeter defenders were interesting to me because it lets you know kind of what the league thinks. Drew Holiday, after that steal, it's incredible what recency bias will do, but he's always been thought of that way. Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, with Patrick Beverley and Marcus Smart also getting votes. All right, let me look and see what other notes I have in my drink-drenched notes. Larry Nance was voted as most underrated player pickup. I think that's super true. And thought that was worth. Jared Butler got a vote for biggest steal of the draft. He's showing that to be true. Good fun night for him tonight to keep an eye on that one. Few other ones I think are interesting. Watching right now in the preseason, there's two types of three-point shots. I'm going to do a little deeper dive on this. There's the three-point shot, which was the old three-point shot in the league, which is what I call the good to great three. You have a good shot, you make the extra pass, you get the great three. Now there seems to be what I felt like the Jazz did last year and really changed the way transition was played and the game was played was that's good enough three. In other words, it's early in the possession. We've come down the floor. We've got a good look, and that's going to be good enough. And so we launched that three as I'm calling it, the good enough three. And that's where I think teams are finding they can pick up the other three. Half-court defenses are too good right now. That extra pass is not yielding great threes on the good to great. And I think as you see someone like Tom Thibodeau saying we want to go, up to 30, 40 threes a game and, finally get involved in this, and other teams like New Orleans last year was a very low three-point shooting team. You've got Trey Murphy, the rookie, taking 8 or 9 a game, and you've got Nickeil Alexander-Walker taking about 8 or 9 a game. You're going to see these early threes. It's going to be really interesting to watch how this impacts the game because it's a little bit coaches relinquishing a green light to players to take early kind of uncontested transition threes, which used to be thought of as a bad shot. And Quinn just completely unleashed the Jazz on this last year. But is everyone capable of doing it? Is it a good shot for everyone? What's the impact on it? It should increase pace of play dramatically, dramatically being, 5%, which is dramatic. I think we'll see the general pace of play up. Usually a long three leads to another, fast, quick the other way transition, particularly if it's already in the open floor. It could lead to spreading defenses out. If it's successful, it negates the impact of someone like Rudy. Frankly, that would be a real concern from our standpoint is if everyone picks us up and does it, and there's fewer half-court possessions, then Rudy's not as impactful as he would be otherwise. So this is worth watching in that regard. So if I was watching preseason right now, I would keep an eye on that. Ray is wants to point out what an epic NBA Finals is going on. Candace Parker, Diana Taurasi, the old guard, still holding on. Courtney Vanderpool. The good one last night, the Sky do seem to be the better team than Mercury. We'll see if Sandy Brondello, my good friend and head coach of the Mercury, can change that. The Eric Ayala and Locked On College Basketball, Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Women's Basketball is hosting a post-game show. Since no one's doing a WNBA post-game show, we are launching one on the Locked On Podcast Network. That's available for you on Locked On Women's Basketball after each night. James wants to know, are the Jazz going to play their full roster tonight? I don't know. I mean, are they going to play their regular roster or full roster? I think actually we won't see some guys for the first time. I don't know that we'll see, Teague and some of those guys on the end of the bench. I suspect we'll see the first half will be a 9, 10, or 11-man rotation. Very close to normal would be my guess tonight. They've gone pretty hard in practice the last 2 days, and I think they now get the dividend of it, get a day off, get another dividend of it, and then rest Thursday, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, probably Friday, Saturday with Sunday off. Monday, they start getting ready for the season. We kick it off a week from Wednesday. Denny from Philippines, hello, how are you? And Ryan says, what version of Hassan Whiteside do you think we'll get this year? He seems really connected with the team off the court. Will it translate to play on the court? It's going to be really interesting. I mean, the book on Whiteside's always been a focus issue, always been a maturity issue. He's had a great year in Portland. He had some really good years in Miami. Can he find a way to do that while playing 12 to 14 minutes a night in short stints? I think will be an interesting aspect for Whiteside and vital to this team. I've said the whole time, Whiteside's the player that changes, that makes us dramatically better. Rudy Gay for the playoffs makes us more versatile. Hassan Whiteside for the regular season is a player that makes us much better. Jared Butler is a player who gives us a chance to be much more rested. Those are kind of my 3 levels of these players. Whiteside, regular season improvement. We weren't very good when Rudy was off the floor, if he can do it. Gay gives us a chance for playoff improvement if he can do it. And Butler gives us a chance for regular season rest if he can do it. Those are the three things. Those are what's, vital as we move forward for this team. All right, it is Locked On Jazz, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks very much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, tell your smart device to listen to the most recent episode of podcast Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Have a great one.